Well, Jeff was working on he was working on a project, and so he asked me to, give him some material for his project. And it was right on the heels of recording the Fisher Spooner record. So we were kind of coming right out of recording that album. And he wanted to do something on his own. And he had different people coming in and, writing songs. And he asked me to submit material. And, he said, it's very different. It's not your style. I don't know if you're going to be into it. And I guess I was just kind of on a roll because I had just finished writing one record, so I had a lot of material that got cut or isn't used, or when you're working, it's kind of like you end up with all this extra stuff. And so there were a lot of ideas sitting around, and so I started working on stuff for Jeff. And I really, I work in music in such a weird way. Like, I don't call myself a musician, even though I write songs and do everything that a musician does. I just don't kind of, approach it that way. And so I work with producers kind of the way an actor works with a director. And so it's kind of, I go into the writing process just pouring material out, pouring ideas out, just kind of giving as much as I can. And then I sort of rely on producers to help me edit and to shape it. And so I went into Jeff's, and we also sort of created a process. Working on Fisher Spooner material is super technical. It's very architectural. It's really formal. It's a lot of discussions. It's a lot of work. And so I just did not feel like, after finishing one record, going into the same process. So I said, Jeff, I'm happy to write for you, but I just want it to be really easy. And so I'm going to write as fast as I can, and I don't want to have to double myself. I don't want to write the harmonies. I'm just going to crank the stuff out. And I figured that I was going to write this stuff, and then he was going to go to other singers and have them re-sing the material. So I wasn't even worrying about final takes. And a lot of the songs are done really, really in this kind of raw, super fast fashion. And so kind of we booked a session, and we were working in New York, and I was trying to write about a song a day. And after about 2 weeks, he just slowly stopped calling it his record and started calling it your record. And I let it slide for a while. And then, after a couple times, I was like, Jeff, I don't know what, I'm not writing a record. So, I don't know why you keep saying your. And then he was just, he said, I feel like you've got so much material and you're on such a roll, and it really feels like I'm making a record for you now. I went to Warren and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm writing stuff for Jeff, And so Warren was very cool. And we both like to work, apart and together. So it really feeds the Fisher Spooner collaboration when we take breaks and go do other things. And so, at a certain point, I kind of had to say, I kind of made a solo record, and I hate solo records. So, I mean, there was a long time. I mean, this record sat on the shelf. We finished the mixing the same time as the last Fisher Spooner record, and I couldn't do anything with it until I released the Fisher Spooner record. I toured that record. So this record was sitting on the shelf, and so there was a lot of deliberation as to whether it would come out under my name. I mean, I even came up with like a fake band. I mean, Jake Shears from Scissor Sisters was like, you cannot release under your own name. And so I spent like a year trying to come up with a fake band name, which I love the name I came up with. It's Latin that I read out of like a Japanese, Italian tabloid called Ipsy Dixit. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's Ipsy Dixit, Ipsedixit. And I kind of tested it online with fans to see how they react, and it didn't connect. It actually was incredibly easy. It was one of the easiest things I ever did, and so I've ever done. And I mean, you have your difficult days where you sort of set your goal and you want to get a certain amount of work done and you show up, and it's very frustrating. You know, the creative process is a bitch because it's not like, I mean, a job is a bitch. Everything's a bitch. But there's something incredibly frustrating about, pulling off making artwork is tough because it's like you have to have the right, team in place. You've got to have the right access to equipment. You've got to have a studio. You've got to engineer. You've got to have the time set aside. You kind of get like all the logistics worked out, and then you show up and it's like it's not working. Like you don't have an idea. The idea's not coming. The idea sucks. You suck. It just sucks because it's like a job. You can show up and somebody's going to tell you something to do, and you're going to pass the time, and you're going to get done. And you're going to get a check at the end of the day. When you are like making something and you have to create the job to show up to the job to maybe get paid if you can get the job done, but you can't come up with something to do that day, is, that's kind of tough. And so there were a couple days where, it felt like, okay, here is someone handing me, an amazing opportunity, and everything I'm doing is just I wrote the Spanish teenager idea based on a beach in Almeria that I went to in Andalusia, and it was just kind of this core idea that I like that line, and I like this idea of trying to convey this sort of like pastoral, utopic vision of living a very carefree life outside of, I don't know, just the pressures of being like an insane artistic New Yorker. And but the weird thing is, actually, I think that I always had an image for the shot. There's a shot, actually, that didn't make it that we shot where I imagined the Spanish teenager reclining, three-quarter shot, like very specifically like doing all the lines. So when I was writing, I had very specifically this image that would be in the video. But then the video is directed by a first-time director, this guy, Luke Guilford. He's a young photographer, and we worked together on the Fisher Spooner tour. He shot some stuff, and his personal work also is very kind of sun-drenched and metaphysical and hallucinatory. And for this album, I want images that are a bit warmer and more natural and that kind of match the sound. And so I went to Luke and, just basically gave him the song and described all the images that I had and pulled photographs of his that I liked and just let him go.